Welcome, everybody, to the Nightly News Podcast. This is Professor Paul Miller, and I am so honored to be here today with two of the wonderful folks from the Nightly News Media Club. First, we're going to start off by welcoming the co-president of the Nightly News, Dylan Bowman. Dylan, welcome back to the show.
Great to be back, Paul.
And we're also going to talk to one of our new members here. We are being joined by Abbee Breski. Abbee, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Is this your first time ever on a podcast?
Yes.
Well, I really hope you're not nervous. Just make sure you're talking to that microphone, and you will be just fine, because really what's fortunate here is we are here to talk about a major project that we did during the spring term that we were all involved with, as well as former Nightly News President Janelle Dulac, who has since graduated, and I can sort of pinch hit for her and provide some commentary there. And this project that we worked on with the West Shore Connect program. So, interestingly enough, the West Shore Connect has been here since the fall term of 2021 for our 21-22 school year. And it was such an interesting program that I'd first heard about because I had one of the students, Abbee, in one of my very first classes, that my first experiences with them, right? I had him in my Com 101 class. And then I got to know some more of the folks that are in the program. And my wife, Jackie, actually got to do her final project for her master's degree, helping the West Shore Connect program improve their communication from them to our professors. Because at a faculty senate meeting, obviously we're all very happy to have them on campus. We were just a bit concerned about the communication level that was coming from West Shore Connect, because frankly, a lot of the professors just didn't know what the West Shore Connect program was. So Jackie helped with the Humanities and Sciences Department, really to kind of spread the word about what the expectations were, and so that, you know, we had an even more of a bond. And then I would say, gosh, February, maybe, Dylan? Maybe I'm trying to remember the timeline. They reached out to us and asked us to do a PSA video for their program as a way to spread the word of what they're doing here on campus and show the impact that this campus has had on these individuals. And so that's really what we're going to talk about, is this PSA video that we made collectively, and kind of just going into some detail about what that happened. And then, of course, a little bit more about the West Shore Connect program in general, including the mentorship program that they are desperately looking for students for the summer term. So, Abbee, I want to start with you. You knew about this program even before, really, I did. You were involved as a mentor, honestly, before I even knew who you were. How did you hear about this program, and what made you want to get involved?
So I originally had one of the beginning communications courses with Professor Black, and for the first week, she had us go to the club fair as an assignment and just to see what is going on campus. And that's where I found Miss B and Miss Jen. And that is when I kind of got the ball rolling of knowing when to start and who to talk to. So,
and these are the two people that you are referring to. One of them is Sherry Brenzier. She is really the coordinator of everything, and Jen is the paraprofessional that works alongside of her working with the West Shore Connect program. So you found out about this organization through the club fair, and then you decided, I want to be a mentor. What was it about the program? I mean, look, I'm just going to be honest. I know that you work a lot. I know that you've got a lot going on, going to class full time. How and why did you sit and say, man, this is something I want to do even though I'm super busy?
I think it's always been really important to me to understand everybody and what their life story is. And I think that really helps bring a sense of like grounding into my own life. And it was just something that I decided that more people should be involved in, because the students involved in the program, they don't always get these opportunities. And I feel like they should, and most of them should be more accessible to them. So I just felt like anything that I could do to help would be important.
Well, and I'm so glad that you did, because you have had such a major impact on their lives. I mean, even like when we were recording and saying, you know, that you were coming, like everybody was so excited to see you. Like you literally had genuinely a major impact on their lives in a short period of time, which was why it was just obvious for us to kind of bring you in on working with us. When you also worked on the video as part of your final project for public relations class, where I ask students to get involved with a local organization, so that kind of, allowed you to continue working with an organization that you're passionate about in a fairly convenient way. So, well, I want to kind of walk it back a little bit. So, like I said, probably January, February, Sherry reached out to me and said that they were really hoping for somebody or some organization to help them put together a video about what it means to be in the West Shore Connect program as a way for the West Shore School District to potentially advertise that this is a thing, that this is something, this is an option for individuals with special needs. And so, just for those of you who may not be familiar with the West Shore Connect program, it's a program, I have this experience because I have a son on the autism spectrum, and this could have been an interesting program for him. So students who have special needs, certain special needs, are able to attend high school beyond age 18 year, right? So they would get their typical 4 years of high school, but then they could stay until they're 20, 21 years old. And one of the issues with that, it's wonderful. From someone with a son with special needs, it's wonderful that they have that additional opportunity. However, one of the things that I found really interesting that I guess I never really thought about is, by the time you're 19, 20, 21 years old, most of the time you're interacting with other students that are 14, 15, 16 years old. And while that can go well, it sort of kind of just gets repetitive in those last couple of years. And I know that my son dealt with something very similar. Now, what this program does is the West Shore School District has partnered with Central Penn to allow these students to do a variety of things. Number one, audit some classes. So each of the students is taking a class or two when it comes to each term. They're working on life skills. They have a suite in which they're responsible for cleaning and making sure that maybe they're cooking themselves food, and all of those types of things. They're also working on social skills in that they're socializing with one another, but they're also socializing with classmates or other club members that they're going to. And also, Central Penn is also getting involved with the mentorship piece, which I know that you kind of already talked about, but we'll come back to that later. So it's really this multifaceted experience for these students. So I hope I did a good job explaining that. Would you say?
Yes.
Okay. Well, so what I want to talk about is going back to this video. So, of course, Jen Dulac, our former president, had created, I believe, 4 different documentaries during her time here. And then, of course, Dylan, you have been working in video for years. I mean, I have gone through your YouTube page and seen as far back as, 7 or 8 years old, you're, doing videos, which is pretty incredible.
Yeah, pretty young.
So tell us how you got started in video at that age.
Oh, gee. So basically just getting like one of those little Kodak cameras that fits in the palm of your hand and just walking around everywhere and taking video and picture of everybody and everything.
What was it that was so interesting to you, though, at such a young age?
I think it was just the fact of like being able to capture the past and then being able to use that in the future. Looking back now with my friends on our younger selves just doing like random stupid things, it's actually really amazing. People would be like, back in the day, why are you carrying that around? Like, stop videoing everything. And nowadays, people are like, wow, you actually still have that moment. And that's what I really like about that.
I had done some video stuff in the past. I was obviously more an audio person. I've worked in audio for many years. Right. But of course, much of what you learn in audio does translate into video. It's just, a different sense that people are using to bring in information. So initially, you, myself, and Jen, Dylan, all got together, and we wanted to really go through it the way that we knew we should, and that is a variety of things. You're talking scouting locations. You're talking making sure we have the appropriate releases signed, developing a script and a shot list. Now, it's very difficult, as I'm sure you know, to develop a script for essentially a documentary.
Right.
However, because we were able to develop almost like an outline of what we wanted, that made our actual filming so much easier.
It really did.
I mean, one of the things that I loved about this whole experience is we spent, I don't know, 2 months on what you would call pre-production, which is all of these things, making sure we have dates, making sure that we have locations, we have releases from everyone, a script, a shot list, so we know what we're filming. So on that time of production, we actually produced the entire thing in
3 days.
It was 3 days, but we had like one full day, and then we had parts of 2 other days.
That is true. It's more like 2 days.
Yeah,
really.
I mean, essentially it ended up being 2 days for something that we had planned for months to execute. And so just a piece of advice for any of you out there that are looking to start your own video, or starting to make your own, maybe shorts or full length, you have got to put twice the amount of time you think you're going to need in pre-production to make sure that all of your I's are dotted and T's are crossed. I mean, I know that's a cliche, but that was the biggest thing I learned when I was first doing this is how much time pre-production really takes to flesh out the idea, to get all of those things taken care of, and then to actually get everything together.
Right, but it's all worth it in the end.
Oh, absolutely, without a question. All right, so over the course of, let's say, February and even into March, and I believe we got them a script and a shot list in April, and we basically explained to them what our vision was. They loved it. We got the shot list. They loved it. And then it comes time to putting everything together. And we had basically, to Dylan's point, 2 days, but better part of 3. But the biggest thing was we had a variety of scenes outdoors. And when we shot that, I believe that was in late April or early May, it was still a little dicey how outside was going to look. But share about the day we actually got to shoot outside.
Well, the day we got to shoot outside was beautiful. We had great weather for it. And then if I'm remembering correctly, when we went inside, it was cloudy, maybe even raining.
It rained. I mean, we just got so lucky. And so that's another part of all of this. Like, if it would have been the opposite, now I guess we could have, and we kind of planned on that. Like, okay, if the first Wednesday is nice, we're going to shoot outside. If it's not, we're going to shoot inside. But we just got the perfect weather, the most beautiful day to shoot outside. And I think we had 7 or 8 different just random places on campus that we were taking really essentially B-roll. But that, to me, some of the shots you got of like the Boyer Creek and even just some of the very picturesque places on our campus were really, really put this video over the top. So I appreciate, your kind of location scouting, but any of you who are listening to this, take a walk today. Walk around the campus. Our campus is so beautiful, and there's so many just small little nooks that just add to its beauty. And I think, Dylan, you did such a great job of capturing that. And I really think our campus and that scenery and that backdrop really helped this video really go over the top. So I give you a ton of credit.
Thank you very much.
So we got the first day, and again, we filmed at the library, and we filmed in the underground, and of course, we filmed outside by the pool, and there was we went down to the fire pit, and Dylan even got some shots of the creek. But really, what the bulk of this was bringing in a lot of different people and interviewing them, and that can be difficult. And so what Abbee's job was here, we had one scene was actually just the Connect students came to one of my classes, and we had a really interesting day. We did a really special assignment, which I thought was not only relevant to the class, but also relevant to all the students. And so Abbee was there for that and did a wonderful job. But where Abbee really shined as the assistant producer of our video was she was really the person that was driving the interviews. So like Dylan and I were upstairs in one of the bedrooms, conducting the interviews. But Abbee was such a valuable piece because she was keeping organization downstairs. She was also kind of updating people on what it is and what our goals were and what some of the questions might be. Abbee, as somebody who's admittedly never done something quite like this, what were you feeling when you first got there that day?
I think definitely a little bit overwhelmed. I am definitely more of an introverted person. So trying to help people and almost in a sense tell them what's happening is not a position that I'm normally in or comfortable doing. But I think overall it was just a good learning experience for me and just realizing kind of what more I am capable of.
Without question. I mean, even though Dylan's done a ton of stuff like this and Jen's done a ton of stuff like this and I have too, it's all still new. I mean, it was the first time we'd all ever really worked together in that capacity. And even something like that was probably a bit more involved than a lot of the things that I had done in the past. And even Dylan, a lot of the stuff that Dylan's done in the past was more scripted, I suppose you would say.
Yeah, pretty much.
And so this was just such a difficult thing to all bring together. But as we look back on it, it was so amazing how it all came together. Everybody did a perfect job. Everybody involved, which is really just the four of us. And I don't want to, downplay any others who were involved. Of course, all of the folks from the West Shore Connect, right? But just in terms of the production of the video, it was Jen, it was Dylan, it was Abbee, and it was myself. And I got to tell you, all the time that we put into that, getting ready, it just made everything so smooth on the day of. So that pre-production time really was super helpful. But to Dylan's point, it was half of a day and another, hour and a half, and then another relatively full day. So we basically filmed everything in about 2 days. But then Dylan had the monumental job of having to sift through everything and turn it into an actual story with a narrative. How difficult was that for you to put together?
It wasn't so much difficult as time consuming, I would say. That's one of the biggest things for editing, is that I find it's not hard to do as so much as it is time consuming. Like, you'll look at your watch, it's like, oh wow, 4 hours have passed and I'm this far.
That is the one thing that I remember from putting my movie together is, I mean, you would just be engrossed in it for hours and hours and hours, and like half a day would go by and you feel like you hadn't done anything,
right?
Fortunately, we did have a pretty good, again, it's hard to script it because it's an interview session, but I think that we had a really good idea, and I know for me, like, I would just try to isolate some sound bites that I thought were going to work with that specific section. But I got to tell you, you came up with it so quickly, and the first time that I remember seeing the video, I actually played it in a club meeting, and gosh, it literally brought a tear to my eye. Like, that's how amazing it was the first time that I saw it. And even, when we asked them, because we were doing it for a client, to give the approval, and they loved it. There was like 2 things that needed touched up, and that just goes to show you like how amazing of a job that you did putting this all together.
Well, thank you very much for that. It means a lot.
I really just wanted to come here today to share more about this. If you'd like to watch these videos, go to YouTube and type in the nightly news at Central Penn College and check out our YouTube channel. And then once you click on that, you will find the West Shore Connect PSA trailer and the West Shore Connect Nightly News Media Club PSA. To this point, the PSA has over 400 views. And again, after being really only released just a little bit over a month ago, that's pretty incredible how widely viewed it's been and what amazing feedback we've received.
I got to say, I was surprised.
Why? Why are you surprised? You've done this so many times.
Just at how quickly the views came in.
That
was surprising to me.
And so, Abbee, as we come sort of full circle here, I know that you said that if nothing else, this gives you some more confidence in what you're able to do. But how else are you going to look at this? I mean, obviously, it's something you can put on a resume or on your LinkedIn page, and you can continue to show your efforts here. But as you think back to it, a month and a half ago, tell me what you're going to take with you in the future from this experience.
I think overall from this experience is just kind of those uncomfortable situations you might put yourself, or those new uncomfortable situations you put yourself in, can really lead to a lot of growth in yourself and in other people around you. I feel like you can really understand more people and really understand more of why people act and think the way they do, and kind of their own life battles or kind of obstacles that they've overcome.
Absolutely. And Abbee, I certainly hope that as the terms continue on, that you take a more leading role into the nightly news. It's wonderful because we're accelerated, but we also, people unfortunately come and go quickly. We lost our president and our vice president, and now, of course, Dylan and Alexa have stepped up, but even so, you're only going to be here for another term after
right.
this. So we're going to give you the opportunity, but there's going to be lots of opportunities for people like Abbee in the future. So Abbee, I really appreciate not only your efforts, but your passion for this amazing organization. Dylan, what are you going to take away from this experience?
Being able to work with a team, I think this was one of the first times I was able to do that, and that was really interesting to envelop myself in that environment.
And this is interesting too. And I know that when I had Jen on to talk about her film series experience last term, we had talked about collaborating on something, Jen and I, for a long time. And this was that chance. And obviously, the two of you also worked with us. But, it was so nice. So Jen directed the outdoor scenes, which was super helpful. Dylan was responsible for the videography and the editing, which, really, you did a lot of the work here on this project. I'm not going to downplay it. I was the producer in that I was the logistics person. I made sure that people knew when they needed to be there, what to expect. I was kind of just in the background, making sure people were getting releases signed, things like that. And of course, we talked about what Abbee did earlier, but this really was a team effort. Every video that I had done in the past was all really me. I did everything. I was filming, I was producing, I was directing, I was editing. And this was just so much fun for me because I could actually let each of you do your thing, do the thing that you're really good at, which I loved. One final question here. Well, really more of a statement than anything. I wanted to just put out that Central Penn College and the West Shore Connect program are currently hiring student mentors for the fall term. Mentors will be partnered with college-age students with disabilities and will help expose them to age-appropriate experiences at Central Penn, like classes or club meetings or other things on campus. If you are interested in applying, please reach out to Adrian Thoman at adrianthoman@centralpenn.edu. Of course, I'll put that along with this podcast. But as we close here, Abbee, you've been a mentor. Tell us how rewarding it can be and why it's something that not only you've done, but you're hoping to do in the future.
I think mentoring just brings almost like an outsider's perspective on classes and just being able to help them or guide them through class. And especially like the students that I've worked with, they kind of bring a light into the room, most of them. And
they have a different way of looking at things,
yes. And they're just some of the best people to be around. So I think it not only like brightens my day, but just to know that they are so open to this experience is just kind of different feeling, I guess.
I love it. Well, again, Abbee has done this before, so if you see her around campus, feel free to ask her any questions you might have about this. But we just appreciate all the efforts and hopefully continued efforts with the West Shore Connect program. And we highly encourage you to go to the Nightly News Media Club at Central Penn College and check out these videos. I think that you're really going to love it. The main video is just a little bit over 6 minutes, so just take a 5-minute break from work and check it out. I think you'll really enjoy it. But what I really do want to say as we come to a close here, everyone, first of all, Dylan, Abbee, thank you so much for being here today, taking time out of your busy schedules to join the Nightly News podcast. But what I really want to say is thank you. This was a pro bono client, if you will. This was in addition to other duties with the club and obviously work and school. So the fact that you were able to take time out to do this means a lot. But what means even more is the professionalism with which both of you engaged in this project. To me, it could have gone a variety of different ways. You're pulled in so many different directions. Dylan, you got that video out like week 10. We had a ton of other stuff going on. The priority with which you two focused on this project, I just really, really thank you because you really showed what not only the Nightly News, but Central Penn College is all about. So I just wanted to thank you so much for being such an integral part of this whole project.
Absolutely. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Well, that's going to do it for this episode of the Nightly News podcast. For Dylan Bowman, the Nightly News co-president, and for Abbee Breski, she was the assistant producer and also a West Shore Connect mentor. This is Professor Paul Miller, and I'll see you next time on the Nightly News podcast.
This is co-president of the Nightly News Media Club, Tyler Coleman, and you are listening to the Nightly News podcast.
Welcome, everybody, to the Nightly News Podcast. This is Professor Paul Miller, and I am so honored to be joined here today by the Assistant Director of Student Advising and Military Benefits Coordinator, Dan Guerrisi. Dan, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you, Paul.
It's been a little while since we've had you on, but we've got a lot to talk about today.
Yes.
So what we're going to be talking about today is the upcoming Adulting Fair. So save the date for Wednesday, September 7th from 12 to 2 in the Central Penn Quad. a fun afternoon of games, free food, and free ice cream from Christie's Whistle Stop to help students learn how to plan meals on a budget, sort laundry, understand their finances, and be an adult. So really looking forward to that. But in addition to talking about that, Dan, one of the biggest things that I want to do is talk about your recent experience at the Pennies Conference, where you presented with Steve Hassinger about the year's previous adulting fair. So we'll be chatting about that more in just a couple of minutes. We're also being joined by, I'm not really even sure what to call you at this point, because coming into this, you were always an officer in the Nightly News, but we can just say Nightly News Officer Emeritus at this point. You have done us a huge favor, and we'll get to the graduation piece in a moment. But you are kind of helping us move from one leadership group to another leadership group, which I appreciate so much. We actually had 4 of our club officers either at the time or previously graduate at the last graduation, which is, of course, always wonderful. But then, your club officers are often your most engaged members. So Jamie is really kind of just helping us until we get, hopefully, to the end of the year, where we're going to bring in new officers. And we're going to be looking forward to that. So, Jamie, welcome back to the show.
Always a pleasure.
And Jamie's also going to continue, at least through the end of the year, doing the news podcasts, which she's been doing, for what, about 2 years now?
Yeah, I think it's close to 2 years.
Yeah, and it's amazing. Like, if you would listen back, I don't know if you've listened back to any of your older ones and then compare them to now. I mean, you were always wonderful, but I got to tell you, like, the improvement that I've seen is really tremendous. I mean, that's what we hope for as professors, to watch you grow over time. And I really encourage everybody to tune in to Jamie's news podcasts. They're really wonderful. And frankly, you're the first news correspondent that we've had in that role for quite some time. And it's something that you're kind of blazing a pathway for other people and opportunities, because we didn't have anyone interested in doing it for the longest time, so we just didn't do it. Now I've already gotten people coming up to me, hey, I would love to be the new news correspondent. And I said, hey, Jamie and I already worked out she's going to do it through the end of the year, but certainly in 23. So, Jamie, I'm going to start with you. Graduation. Now, obviously, you're still a Central Penn employee, but what does it mean to you to have finished? Is your life changed?
I would say yes. And in some forms it has. The accomplishment is a huge aspect for me. Getting my bachelor's degree was always something that I wanted to do. So it's almost like not even lifelike when you get the degree in the mail and you open it up and you're like, oh my gosh, this is real. But I continue on adding my skills as I finish my degree. So it definitely has set in, I think, that I'm finished.
Well, one thing that I do think is important to note is we live in a culture where we have to be lifelong learners. Even once you get to the point where you get that associate's or you get that bachelor's, or maybe even at some point, maybe go back for your master's, even if you're not currently being educated in higher education, you still have to stay up to date on current trends, especially in our field. If you just give up and say, you know what, I'm done learning and I'm just going to use the skills that I've learned, you really are kind of hamstringing yourself, because you have to continue communications of all fields, staying up with the things that are new to our area. So even just doing things like going back through and using things like the HubSpot Academy, which we used, and continuing to update those, or even through like LinkedIn Learning, there's some really, really good programming on there. It's really just to kind of help keep that part of you sharp. So, maybe if there ever would be another job, or maybe you want to go back to school, or those types of things, that you can talk about how you continue to strive to be a lifelong learner. So I think that's wonderful. And that being said, Jamie, I would totally understand if you took a little time off from learning for a little while, because you put in so much time and effort. And not only that, as an employee of the school, you have a family, you're involved with some local businesses, you're a club officer. I mean, I can totally understand how just wanting to step back a little bit and kind of take a little time to breathe over this summer makes perfect sense.
For sure, the summer's the perfect time.
Well, again, Jamie, we thank you so much, not only for your efforts and contributions to our program and the club, but hanging around and kind of helping us sort of make this transition from one leadership group to the next. It's truly invaluable. So I thank you so much for that.
Oh, thank you for having me all the time.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about the adulting fair. Dan, you are one of the folks that are really one of the main organizers of this. Now, if I'm not mistaken, is this the third year for this?
Yes, it is the third year. So we started this in 2019, and then obviously 2020 happened. So we took a year off, and then we restarted it in 2021, and then the hurricane happened, so we delayed a little bit.
That was so crazy because that was the same day as the Business Partner of the Year breakfast.
Yes.
And I remember people literally had to cancel because of flooding in the area. So it probably was for the best that you did move it last year. Now, let me ask you, where did this idea first come from? I mean, obviously, it seems to be this is sponsored by the Student Success and Advising Center, but where did you feel that this idea came from? Were there other colleges around that did this sort of thing, or is this just something that kind of popped into your mind?
So we were brainstorming as far as different programming that we could do in 2019. And one of the things we thought of was helping our students learn outside of the classroom in different areas. And one of them was like just life skills, like budgeting, doing laundry, things like that some of our students may not have had that much experience with before coming here. So we started that, and then we kind of ran with it, and it just snowballed into what it is now as, the Adulting Fair in third year. And we're looking for outside partners and looking at different areas that we can expand. So it's really becoming something really special.
And this is definitely something so one of the things that we on the faculty side, I love doing these types of things. I love, if it's taking a day off of class, I don't really say, let's just replace our class, not taking a day off of class, but to come to something like this, really all we need is to be able to justify, hey, this is helping us achieve one of our learning objectives for this course. Because the way that you're presenting this talks about so many different skills, I think that almost anybody can do this. And I definitely put out the hope that some of the faculty members who might have class during this time period consider bringing their entire classes to this and maybe have like an assignment along with it or something like that to help them sort of achieve those learning objectives, because this is really important stuff. I mean, I got to be honest with you, even something as simple as doing laundry, and you might think, like, people might scoff at that and be like, oh, what do you mean? These kids know how to do laundry. No, they don't. Like, and I'd be honest, when I was in college, I wasn't really one to do my own laundry. I mean, this would have been something that I absolutely would have loved. Another thing is budgeting. Dan and Jamie both working in the advising center now. One of the biggest issues that I hear students talk about is time, because they're working so much, which I get. I worked through college. I'm sure both of you both did as well. But here's my question: is part of the reason that students need to work so much because they don't budget their money properly?
That's a good question, Paul. I mean, it's hard to answer that, but I think that plays into it big time. I know one of the tables is discussing reviewing your paycheck to see, an employer might say you make this money, but after taxes and insurance and all this, you really make this much money. So breaking down the paycheck to see what your actual take-home pay is, and that'll be a really interesting table, because you're right. Like, I don't know if it's just that students aren't budgeting correctly, or if they don't even know how to budget or even where to begin with budgeting. So this is a really special event, because we can help them, just review just the basics of budgeting, where to even begin. Because I know when I was in college, I didn't know anything about budgeting. So we're really happy that we actually have multiple tables talking about budgeting. So it'll be a big topic.
So some of the other things, okay, so you said planning meals on a budget. Now, that's also really interesting here, too, because a lot of the students here on campus living in the suites, they have a kitchenette, but it's not like a full kitchen. So even just being able to budget their meal plan money, one of the things I'm sure you've heard, and I'm sure we've all heard, is that a lot of students, when it comes to the end of the term, they run out of funds. And that is also a serious issue, because obviously we want to make sure that people have food. I mean, that's one of our basic necessities. So tell me, just maybe give us sort of a peek behind the door on some of the discussions, maybe on how to plan meals on a budget, for example.
Yeah, and that's another big one. With food prices going up and having no sign of slowing down. So that is one this is the third year that we're actually doing it. And Megan Peterson runs that table, and she does a fantastic job where she breaks down food costs and, recipes and different recipes that you can use that have less ingredients or less, cheaper food costs, or the substitute foods. So she does a really fantastic job with that.
And just to point out as well, the NPR is also open for anybody who wants. Now you do have to reserve it, but for anybody who wants to make a dinner, or like maybe their housemates want to just get together and make a big dinner and then have a bunch of leftovers. I mean, something like that. You want to talk about a very basic thing? Let's say you got 5 people and you all throw in $5. You got $25. You can make a heck of a meal and have a ton of leftovers with $25, as opposed to going to McDonald's and paying $10 to $15 for a value meal.
It's crazy.
That's insane what the
crazy.
prices of food out in public are at this point.
I know, and when I see students go out and go to restaurants all the time, it's like, you could really be saving money by going to the grocery store. I know it's a hit up front, but like in the long run, it saves you a lot of money.
Well, especially if you have the facilities to do that, which I do think that, unfortunately, the NPR is a little underutilized, if you ask me. And
so
I've had some club meetings in there before where we've cooked too. That's actually way cheaper for us. We're actually saving money as a club, because instead of maybe going out and ordering 5 pizzas to feed the group, I can spend $25, $30 and make food for everybody. And I remember last time I had not only made food for everybody, everyone took food home with them. And I thought that was really unique. Now, Jamie, you're here obviously because we love having you here. But one of the things that you did last year, and one of the stories that ended up in our publication, was your coverage of the Adulting Fair. So just walk us back to 2021 and tell us a little bit more about what some of your perceptions were on this event.
I think it was a great event for students of all ages to get involved in. You think about the traditional students that might need more assistance versus an adult student, but I think that there was needs met for both types of students there, whether it is budgeting, like we talked about, and that's changing for everybody with the ever increasing cost of food, and that's something that we all need to kind of maybe reevaluate. And maybe it is the basics for some of our younger students of folding laundry and things like that. But I think each table was great because they also offered passports and a passport system which allowed each student to have to get a stamp on their passport in order to stop at every table. And I think that's important so that they can get each necessary training or opinion or needed table from each section of assistance.
Now, other than some of the ones that we've mentioned, what were some of the other tables that you remember being there last year?
I really like the financial aid table. It's a whole other different aspect. I don't even think it was called financial aid, but it was basis off of kind of learning more about your student loans and understanding what you're doing with your student loans. I think a lot of the students maybe don't understand the concept of loans and grants, so that was a great table for me personally that I think a lot of students got a lot of information from.
2 things I want to mention, and I would love to hear both of your insight on this. Number one of the most, in my Com 101 class, one of the things that I had started doing was really talking about student loans. Now, I was using it as a way to give an example of how to give a speech. But my speech was an informative speech on educating students about their loans. And you would, maybe you wouldn't be, I was surprised how few people really even knew just basic stuff about the difference between a grant and a loan, about the difference between subsidized and unsubsidized loans, what impact that makes, what your payments are going to look like, things like that. And I love, obviously, if it wasn't for loans, I wouldn't have been able to go to school at any point in my life. So I don't want to critique the system. However, I do think it's a little too easy for people to get loans without actually having to go through the process. And I know that they have to go through this little modules and things like that on the FAFSA website, and I do think that has value. But it's sort of in one ear and out the other. Like you learn what you need to know to get your loan, and then by the time 4.5 years later comes around, you got to pay those loans back. All of a sudden, you forget everything. And so I think that's one really important piece. The second piece that, and I'm sure Jamie will kind of back me up on this, one of the things that I do in all of my classes is anytime there is this foundation scholarship application available, which it is now till the end of this week, I always make my students do it. And what's so interesting is the best emails that I get are like, Professor Miller, I won $1,000. Thank you so much. Like, it means so much to me. I didn't really know about the process, and now that I've gone through it, I'm going to continue to do it. And I've just done that all along because I have to be honest. I've been in the scholarship selection committee really since I've been full-time, because that's something I'm very passionate about. Unfortunately, there were times when there weren't even enough applicants to even give away all of the money. And I know that 90% of our students are not independently wealthy. You know what I mean? And it was something that was really important to me, and I've really turned a lot of people onto the process. And not to say that it's solely me that's making this difference, but even over the last 2 years, I've seen a tremendous increase with the number of students who have been applying. So I hope that those are two of the conversations that are had.
No, Paul, I mean, you make great points. Yeah, the foundation scholarship is amazing, and I don't think students utilize the amount of scholarship money the foundation has to offer enough. It's an amazing organization. And again, about student loans, I think it's funny that the Department of Education gives out student loans without any credit check, but private loans and credit cards and bank loans and car loans, you have to go jump through hoops just to get one. It's not a great system, but I really don't have an answer to fix it either. But I think that, a lot of students, we hear it all the time. It's, I got financial aid. It's like, well, do you know what financial aid is? It's not free money. Like, it's a breakdown of grants, scholarships, and loans. And the loans you got to pay back at, right now, I think it's like 5%.
Yeah,
so
and they all vary. So just even something as simple as knowing what your percentage of interest you're paying on these loans is super important.
Yes, yeah.
Well, Dan, the last thing that I want to talk about here before we wrap up our podcast today is an experience that we got to do, and was it in April? I'm pretty sure it was in either late April or early May.
I think it was in April.
It's crazy.
No, it was early May.
It's crazy that it's gone by this fast. I had Steve Hassinger on talking about the Business Partner of the Year breakfast, but we, of course, talked about our experience at Penny's. So Steve and I presented at Penny's that we discussed last time. But Dan, you and Steve also presented at the Penny's conference, and you did a wonderful job. But you were talking about the grant that you received from Penny's in order to put on the Adulting Fair last year, and that was a key part in some of the things that you were able to do. So tell us a little bit more about that process and how it all came to be.
Yeah, so Steve, this is probably winter of 2021. Steve, no, this is fall of 2020. Steve mentioned about a grant that Penny's gives out to schools for to promote events on campus that involve career services. So I thought the Adulting Fair, we can tie it into career services. So Steve and I worked on the grant. We submitted it. It was approved, so we got $250 for the Adulting Fair last year.
Yay.
Yeah, it was awesome. Really helped out, and it was a great experience. And then as part of the grant process, I committed to present at the conference, which early May, Kalahari, which, by the way, is gigantic.
It was unbelievable.
I got lost there.
Did you ever get to go down the water slide?
No, I didn't go down the water slide.
Well, so what's really interesting is I didn't either, but I found out the second day that part of going there and staying there that you get to do all the stuff. So like the second day of the conference, all the people were talking about, how they'd spent time at the water park. And I'm sitting here thinking, why did no one tell me that I could go to the water park? But
it
Dan,
is massive.
Dan joined us for the second day. Steve and I presented on the first day. But you did such a great job really outlining more about the Adulting Fair. And I have to be honest, I hope that there are these types of opportunities for you in the future, maybe from Penny's, but also maybe from some other places that are giving grants out to things like this, because I really think that this is really valuable. I really hope that people try their very best to include this in some of their curriculum, try to bring some of their students here on campus, and I wish you very well in this upcoming event, and I'm sure it's going to be successful as it was in the past.
Thank you so much, Paul. Yeah, and it's I just got an email from Steve yesterday that one of the attendees is now hosting an Adulting Fair on their campus.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
So we're inspiring other schools to do it.
Well, and I think that's what's so important about these conferences. One of the things that Steve and I talked about was how career services and faculty members can have more of a synergy. Because one of the things I noticed in being there is that so many of the career services folks have this almost sort of siloing where because their staff and the faculty, they just find it very difficult to get together on some things. And so we definitely realize that that we are unbelievably unique at Central Penn.
Yes.
And that it's frankly not every single school, some of the things that we talked about are necessarily going to be applicable, but we tried to talk about, okay, so if you're a smaller school, you can do this. If you're a bigger school, you can do this. Here are just some tips for how you can start making that happen, because as Steve always notes, we met in the lunchroom. And I mean, that's how we started to get involved. And now I have career services involved in almost every single one of my classes.
Yeah.
So I think that that's really important as well. So that conference was great. I'm so happy to hear that there are other people that are kind of following your lead from this successful event and implementing it on their own campuses.
Yeah, I was really happy to hear that. And it's funny you mentioned about, how unique Central Penn is, because like you said, like I do talk to other schools, and the staff faculty dynamic is very different than it is here. And it's like, well, we could never do that here because, the faculty and staff don't get along, or they don't talk, or they don't communicate, and like it's not like that here. So
well, and one thing I noticed too is like, unfortunately, if you have that sort of closed-minded perspective that, hey, this is never going to work out, you're probably not even trying to put yourself out there.
Yeah.
And that was really what the theme of our presentation was, like, put yourself out there. What's the worst that someone can say? No? I mean, if you're not asking, it's already a no.
Yeah.
If you ask, I guess at least you have a chance for somebody to say yes, or to at least start the conversation. But yeah, it was so cool. I really enjoyed the Pennies Conference so much because it was the first time. Now, I obviously have shared, I've presented at the Popular Cultural Association National Conference. Both of the last two were online.
Yeah.
One was supposed to be in Boston and one was supposed to be in Seattle, and they were both postponed. So I'm presenting from my kitchen. This was the first time I actually got to go somewhere and present, and it was just such a great experience. The networking was tremendous. I met so many amazing people. I'm probably going to go back from now on.
Yeah.
Because it's something, because I integrate career services so much into my classes, I think it's something important. And everyone was just shocked that Steve brought a faculty member. Like, I probably had 5 or 6 different people. This is so crazy. We to your point, like, faculty members would never come to something like this. And it's just real unique, and I really enjoyed it. So
Yeah, it was a great conference.
Well, and Jamie, any final thoughts on what you are looking forward to for the Adulting Fair coming up this year?
I'm kind of interested about the low budget recipes. I'm interested in that with the rising cost of groceries. That would help me out as well.
Definitely. And I would love to learn more about sorting laundry because it's still something that I wish I was a little bit better at. But yeah, I love that you've got all kinds of, you've got food, you've got ice cream from Christie's Whistle Stop, you've got games, you've got pretty much every single department around campus represented at this Adulting Fair. So please, everybody, mark your calendars for Wednesday, September 7th from 12 to 2 in the Central Penn Quad for the Adulting Fair, sponsored by the Student Success and Advising Center. Well, Dan, as always, it's such a pleasure to have you. I hope the event goes really well. And anytime you've got something excellent going on here on campus, please let me know. We'll have you back on the podcast.
Thank you so much, Paul.
It's my pleasure. And Jamie, thank you so much, A, for being such a wonderful person, but B, seriously continuing to maintain your role with the Nightly News going forward and kind of helping us go from in these leadership changes. You have no idea how much it means to us that you're a part of this.
You say that, but I enjoy it just as much. So thank you.
And yeah, it's my pleasure. And again, congratulations on graduation and the wonderfully high GPA that you graduated with honors.
You.
So, all right, well, that's going to do it for this episode of the Nightly News Podcast. I wanted to take the time to thank the Assistant Director of Student Advising, Dan Guerrisi, and of course, our Nightly News, we'll call you're still the Nightly News correspondent.
I'll hold on to it for a little bit.
So, news correspondent Jamie Harmon, and thank you both for being here. That's going to do it for this episode. We'll see you again next time on the Nightly News Podcast.